Most people never stop to ask how old our fear of the unknown really is, or how far back humans have carved prayers into stone to quiet that fear. If you've ever found yourself wondering why nearly every culture on Earth has believed in gods, spirits, or unseen forces, you're not alone. Grab some popcorn and maybe a notebook and pen, because the clues start deep in human prehistory. Archaeologists have found graves more than 90,000 years old in places like Khafza and School caves in modern Israel, where people buried their dead with beads, red ochre, or animal bones. This suggests that even before cities or writing, humans imagined that death was not the end and that something watched over life and the afterlife. 90,000 years ago. Let that sink in. By around 9600 BCE, hunter-gatherers in what is now Turkey built Göbekli Tepe, a ring of carved stone pillars covered in images of animals and abstract symbols. It is older than Stonehenge or the Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years and was built before the first permanent villages. It shows that people gathered for rituals and shared stories about the world long before they farmed wheat or kept sheep. Think about that. Huge sacred circles, no farms yet. By about 7000 BCE, at Kütahya in southern Turkey, people lived in tight clusters of mud brick houses decorated inside with wall paintings and bull skulls. Some rooms served as shrines, and graves were often beneath the floors. Early communities did not separate daily life from spiritual life. Belief was woven into how they lived and died. No border between home and holy ground. By 3500 BCE, the Sumerians built cities like Uruk and Ur in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They raised ziggurats, massive step pyramids that dominated the flat plains. These temples were centers of ritual, trade, food storage, and law. Clay tablets from these cities record hymns to gods like Inanna and Enlil, transactions of grain and sheep, and the first written laws and myths. Beyond control, these early codes laid the groundwork for justice and social order in a world without centralized government. One building could be a temple, a bank, and a courthouse all at once. In about 1750 BCE, King Hammurabi of Babylon carved his code of laws into black stone. The inscription says the gods Anu and Enlil chose him to bring order and justice. This code covered contracts, theft, debts, and punishment and is one of the earliest surviving examples of written law linked directly to divine authority. In Egypt, around 3000 BCE, the first pharaohs unified Upper and Lower Egypt under a single crown. For more than 3,000 years, the pharaoh was not only a king but considered a living god, the earthly form of Horus. After death, he became Osiris, ruler of the underworld. Egyptian temples and pyramids were built to maintain harmony between heaven and earth and to ensure a stable flooding of the Nile that supported life along its banks. These monumental works also drove advances in engineering, art, and mathematics that shaped civilization far beyond Egypt's borders. A king, a god, and a river, bound together for centuries. In China, around 1600 BCE, the Shang dynasty performed sacrifices to ancestors and nature spirits, believing these spirits influenced harvests and victories. By 1046 BCE, the Zhou dynasty introduced the mandate of heaven. This idea claimed that heaven gave the right to rule and could withdraw it if a king became corrupt. This belief explained natural disasters, rebellions, and regime changes for more than 2,000 years of Chinese history. Imagine a storm or famine deciding if your king loses his crown. In India, around 1500 BCE, the oldest parts of the Vedas were composed. These hymns, passed down orally before they were written, described a world ruled by many gods who controlled elements like fire, wind, and storms. Over centuries, this belief system developed into what is now Hinduism, which includes the idea of karma and rebirth, binding people to moral behavior and duty within a social structure known as the caste system. Religious teachings here, like in other cultures, helped shape charity, hospitality, and respect for elders. A moral web stretching over countless lifetimes. In Greece, from about 800 BCE, city-states like Athens and Sparta worshipped a pantheon of gods led by Zeus. Temples and oracles shaped public life, and festivals celebrated myths that explained nature, fate, and human behavior. Philosophers questioned old stories, but religion remained central to civic identity and law. Greek temples, statues, poetry, and drama still inspire artists and thinkers today. Gods and reason side by side, what a mix. In Northern Europe, Norse people from around 800 to 1100 CE believed Odin sacrificed an eye for wisdom and Thor guarded the world from chaos. These myths justified warrior codes and clan loyalty, promising the brave a place in Valhalla after death. Different gods, same idea: strength, loyalty, reward. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs founded Tenochtitlan around 1325 CE. They believed the sun god needed blood to rise each day. Human sacrifice was part of state ritual that reinforced the power of priests and rulers who claimed to keep the universe in balance. Power, fear, and faith, all in one ritual. The Hebrew tribes developed their own scriptures during centuries of migration, conflict, and exile. Stories like the creation, the flood, and the laws given to Moses were written down between about 1200 and 400 BCE. Scholars note that the flood story in Genesis closely resembles older Mesopotamian texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh. These texts united scattered tribes under one god and one moral law. A single god to bind wandering people into one story. Christianity began in the 1st century CE as a movement within Judaism based on the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. By 313 CE, the Roman Emperor Constantine legalized the faith with the Edict of Milan. In 325 CE, bishops met at the Council of Nicaea to define core beliefs. Over time, Christianity became the official faith of the Roman Empire, and its structure mirrored imperial bureaucracy. While power was concentrated in church hands, monasteries and scriptoriums preserved ancient literature, copied texts, and kept learning alive through centuries of conflict and illiteracy. After the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 CE, the Catholic Church survived as Europe's unifying force. Popes crowned kings, owned vast lands, and judged disputes. Monasteries preserved learning during the early Middle Ages, and churches replaced old local rituals with saints' days and Christian festivals. Cathedrals, stained glass, illuminated manuscripts, and sacred music remain cultural treasures funded and inspired by organized faith. From scattered villages to grand cathedrals, one story shaping continents. In the 1500s, reformers like Martin Luther challenged the authority of the Catholic Church, translating the Bible into local languages and sparking wars and new denominations. Missionaries carried Christianity worldwide alongside colonial expansion, building churches, schools, hospitals, and orphanages that provided education and care long before governments did. Today, holy books and religious customs still influence modern laws, politics, and family life. From ancient burial beads to Gothic cathedrals and global charities, religion has shaped how humans make sense of life, death, and moral order for thousands of years. At its best, organized religion offers comfort, community, moral guidance, and support during birth, marriage, death, and every struggle in between. And across it all, a pattern as old as the graves we began with. This is the recorded history we know. When I laid out the history like this and really studied the stones, tablets, and old verses, certain things started to click that I could not ignore. The official timeline says that for as long as people have gathered, someone has stepped forward claiming to speak for the unseen, and in almost every age that voice conveniently keeps everyone obedient to a bigger system. I do not claim there is no spiritual truth at all. Maybe there is. But I cannot help noticing that every time humans organize faith, they tie it to rules, taxes, social order, and the threat of punishment now and forever. Take slavery. If a book is divinely perfect, why does it spell out how to buy and sell people? Exodus says a master can beat a slave badly as long as the slave does not die immediately. Leviticus says it is acceptable to own foreigners and pass them down to your children as property. Paul's letters in the New Testament do not free slaves, they tell them to obey. For centuries, these verses were read in churches to justify the worst cruelty one person can do to another, and no prophet or disciple ever clearly said to stop it completely. Then there is money and power. Jesus says give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. Paul says rulers are chosen by God and taxes must be paid because to resist authority is to resist God. These words were repeated by kings and popes to make sure rebellion was not just treason but a sin against heaven. To this day, leaders swear oaths on the Bible while passing laws that often benefit the powerful more than the flock that believes them. Temptation itself seems designed to guarantee failure. In Eden, God places the tree in reach and commands Adam and Eve not to touch it but lets the serpent in anyway. When they eat, humans are blamed, not the serpent or the flawed setup. Over and over, the Bible shows God allowing evil or even stirring it up to prove a point. Pharaoh's heart is hardened by God himself in Exodus to drag out plagues and show divine power. In the book of Job, God gives Satan permission to destroy an innocent man's family and health just to prove loyalty. Romans says God has mercy on whom he wants and hardens whom he wants. Free will does not feel very free when the hand that wrote the rules can twist the heart behind the scenes. When people doubt or ask questions, they are painted as weak or rebellious. Thomas asks for proof and gets scolded that blessed are those who believe without seeing. Job demands an answer for his suffering and gets shut down with rhetorical thunder. For centuries, the church treated curiosity as dangerous. The Bible was chained in Latin while common people were told what it said and warned never to interpret it for themselves. When printing presses spread the text, the church banned translations it did not approve and hunted down those who copied it anyway. Even the idea of who is saved and who is not seems suspiciously human. Different sects interpret the same words to say only their followers are chosen, and everyone else burns. Wars were fought not just over faith in a god but over which human interpretation held the most money and land. Crusades and inquisitions killed millions because someone higher up declared a holy war on behalf of an invisible authority that never wrote a treaty or signed a peace deal in person. Holidays show the same pattern. Christmas lands on December 25th, but nowhere does scripture say that is Jesus' birthday. Roman pagans already celebrated the sun god Mithras and the festival of Saturnalia during the winter solstice. Easter includes eggs and bunnies, symbols of spring and fertility from old pagan rites honoring Yoster. These old customs were repackaged instead of erased because it was easier to convert people if you let them keep familiar traditions with new names. When missionaries traveled with empires, they did not just teach kindness. They burned local texts, demonized native gods, and called entire cultures backward until they bowed to foreign priests. In many places, crosses and churches were built directly on top of sacred sites. Gold and labor poured back to Europe while people were told to thank God for the new masters. Today, organized religion still pulls the same strings in softer ways. Mega pastors promise miracles if you send money first. Politicians preach family values while quoting verses that have nothing to do with modern law. Many believers skip the harsh verses that supported slavery, stoning disobedient children, silencing women, and killing witches. They highlight the loving parts but ignore how much darkness was justified in the same breath. When I connect this all together, what I see is that religion in its purest form might come from a deep human need for answers about death, love, and purpose. But organized religion, the version that crowns kings, collects tithes, bans books, and demands obedience, has always been shaped by human hands. It has been updated, edited, and enforced not to set people free but to keep them in line and paying their share. I am not telling anyone to abandon faith. Some people need it to find hope or live better lives. I am saying read what is actually written. Ask why certain rules survived for centuries while others quietly vanished when they stopped serving kings and bishops. Look at who gains power and wealth when millions follow without question. The evidence is carved in stone, written in ancient scripts, chained in old churches, and printed in modern books. The patterns repeat because they work. They worked for Sumerian priests counting grain in ziggurats. They worked for pharaohs calling themselves gods on earth. They worked for Roman emperors trying to unite a crumbling empire. They worked for popes blessing crusades. They work today for men who fly private jets bought with the faith of those who have almost nothing but hope. I believe humans built this system piece by piece, repackaging fear and wonder into rules, taxes, and moral codes. Maybe there is something beyond this life, but if there is, I doubt it needs megachurches and gold chalices to hear a simple, honest prayer whispered in the dark. So next time someone says obey or burn forever, pay and be blessed, believe without asking, remember this timeline. Remember that for thousands of years the same fear and hope have been shaped into tools that built kingdoms and broke free minds. It still happens today in plain sight, dressed in new robes but preaching the same old line, trust me, or else. You do not have to agree with my theory. You should not take my word for any of it. Check the verses, the tablets, the ruins, the buried truths under shiny altars. Connect your own dots. Ask your own questions. If there really is a divine truth, it will not fear your doubt. Only the ones who profit from it will. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate you. Hit like and subscribe if you want more honest deep dives like this one. Stay curious, stay questioning, and never stop digging for the truth.